Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the RENNSPORT Founders League, to the final season where it will be actually named the RENNSPORT Founders League. And we are back here in the Green Hell at the Nürburgring Nordschleife, and this time back with the TCR cars as well. And who's also back for me once again is Tim Ireland in the commentator's booth. Welcome.
Hey Lino. Hi everyone watching.
We are currently.
I never say hello to the people watching. Sorry.
Oh yeah, that's a good. Maybe starting to do. But however, we are currently in qualifying, and we are seeing one of the Audis, or the Audi today, since Joachim Thunder's back in it, which is nice to see. Other than that, few Elantras, but for the grid size we have quite the stacked grid, I can assure you that. So, Tim, you know the drivers in this race, you know the cars. What do you expect for today? I wouldn't let you pick any driver, because every time you pick a driver, that's not going to happen.
I'm avoiding picking drivers, it's not going to happen. It's TCRs, I always think the touring cars give great racing. It's the Nordschleife, which also gives great racing. So what I'm expecting is great racing.
That's how mathematics works, so I can live with that. But yeah, as you said, I would pretty much agree on it. We can already see this car being pushed to the limits, and he's not the only one to do that. If we jump back, I think that might be the car of Dominik Ladler. He's not holding back either. These drivers have 2 laps in qualifying, or within 20 minutes, 2 laps. A lap with the TCR about 9 minutes. So, got a bit of work to do throughout the lap. So we now go through Adenauer Forst and towards the double left-hander that is Metzgesfeld.
I can't remember for the life of me. Can you remember what the qualifying times were like in the first time we ran TCRs here?
That is a good question. Luckily, there's the so-called RENNSPORT app for your mobile devices where you can look all that important data up. Actually, there's also some stuff been announced today in the radio check, or you could say podcast. Maybe you want to talk about it a bit, because you are more in that than I am. But there was also some stuff announced for the RENNSPORT app, didn't it?
Yeah, there were a couple of updates in the radio check about the RENNSPORT app, including having 3D cars in the garage, which looked very pretty. More for the game itself, a couple of sneak peeks of the new UI that's going to be coming with the early access release, and a couple of car teasers in there as well for the M2 Club Sport, which not a touring car but very similar,
at least in pace.
Yes.
Apart from that, it's very different. But yeah, I mean, it will be a great addition to the game. I mean, the M2 is probably one of the most beginner-friendly race cars that is out there. It's accompanying many racing series out there. I mean, you can think about, for example, the ADAC group has an M2 Cup with the DTM. You have it in IMSA, I think, in the Michelin Cup or something. Of course, lots of M2s in the NLS and VLN series.
Yeah, there's a specific M2 Cup class in SRO America, which races just M2s, funnily enough, as well. So it definitely gets a bunch of track time throughout different race series around the world, and it's a rear-wheel drive touring car in a lot of ways. So it'll be a really good kind of first car for a lot of people starting out, trying to learn racing lines without worrying too much about missing a braking point and going screaming into a barrier at 300 kilometers an hour.
And it's a great racing car for all kinds of skill levels, no matter if you're the absolute R1 pro or just a beginner trying to find some footing in the sim racing world. It just offers so much potential in that way as well, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's a nice balanced rear-wheel drive car that lets people get their feet wet in racing, but it's also the people who have the skill will definitely be able to find the pace, and I'm sure it will bring some really good racing online, both in public and in organised events.
Meanwhile, we watch Eric Häusler blasting through the lower parts of the forest. And now through the Bell of S into Schwalbenschwanz. Meanwhile, also the Nordschleife, of course, being part of the Founders Pack. Since, or hence the name Founders League, basically. But up until in 2 weeks' time, there was only the possibility to buy this pack on Epic Games. But it will be available to you Steam users as well in fairly, well, soon time. So also adding, I think, some form of other payment through Steam. I think Steam offers other stuff as well, right?
Yeah, I think so. I use PayPal on Steam, and I think there's like direct credit card. I'm sure there's other ways as well. But I believe they said on the radio check that Steam will be coming with the early access release, which is going to be early December, is the currently announced, if you can call that a date. But it's not far away.
It really isn't. I mean, 2 weeks. So that's not too far around the corner, but what's also not too far is the start-finish line for the first time lapped. Eric Häusler clocked in 8:55.7. Joachim Thunder now across the line.
That segue was amazing. I loved it.
Thank you. Bit off the pace, about a 9:03. I have the timesheets open from last time we raced TCR on this track, and the pole time was an 8:58.8 by Adrian Lunio, of course, Season 2 champion. But, yeah, that's already 3 seconds faster than what we went last time around. But of course, 3 seconds on the Nordschleife and the TCR. It's not as big of a difference as you might want to think. But Eric Häusler, last time he did this was in 9:06. So for himself, an 11-second improvement. And that is something.
Yeah, he's definitely stamped a decent time into this race so far. I don't know. We'll see what race pace is like with these guys. The tyres on the touring cars are a little bit on the old side as far as our builds are concerned. So they've got their own little quirks, shall we say. And it'll be interesting to see what these guys are going to do about pit stops when they're planning to pit. If they're going to change tyres, I assume they're going to change tyres.
I mean, in before the race, in the Founders chat on Discord, or in the Founders League chat, so you can always pay that a visit if you need some info or some help about the seasons or the leagues. It's leagues and events on the Discord. But Joachim Thunder was rambling a lot about strategy, thinking about what's best. And I mean, he did a small calculation error in the race distance, which set him up, but it could still be very interesting, he said, in terms of the strategy with the fuel and stuff.
Yeah, there is a more obvious strategy, I suppose, when it comes to this race, which I think is going to be 4 laps then pit. But you never know. People like to throw in a bit of a wild card and mix things up a little bit.
wouldn't be the first time we have people mixing up grids. It's always incredible to me, those TCR cars, right? They're front engine, front wheel drive. Not having too much weight on the rear axle, but also not having too much aerodynamic. Instead, you can throw them into corners like Schwedenkreuz. Not quite flat out, but nearly flat out, and these cars still stay planted nowadays. I mean, if I would do that in my 96 Honda Civic, I can assure you the rear would go around at some point. So the grip these cars have, also on the rear, but especially on the front, is insane.
I'm assuming your Civic doesn't have quite the wing of a touring car. They don't have massive wings, but I'm guessing it's a bigger wing than your Civic's got.
I do have a wing.
Okay.
It's not quite as big, yeah, but it is a wing. Some would say I paid way too much money for that, but, well, not much other choice than to get an original one imported from the USA.
And of course, you can tell these aren't Honda Civics because they aren't bouncing off the limiter all the time.
Well, you should listen to them on the Dirtinger Höhe, so...
Well, true.
But neat and tidy through here again for Joachim Thunder. It's nice to see him back with the 4 rings on the grill. Since we had quite a few GT4 events in the past where he opted for the BMW, since he wants to collect mileage on that car. Which is totally reasonable, but it kind of felt odd, didn't it?
It did, yeah. He's very much been an Audi driver in the GT3s. And yeah, with the way we gave away some of the M4 GT4s at EWS, a lot of people have been opting to pick that maybe instead of other cars. Well, other car. But yeah, it's good to see him back in an Audi in his spiritual home and being the only Audi representative on grid right now.
Unfortunately, Dennis Kurzer didn't show up for the start of qualifying. I'm not sure if we will see him for the race. So that will be interesting. Dennis Kurzer, I mean, he had some good runs on this track, didn't he?
He did, yeah. And it's been good to see him turning up event after event and plucking away at the laps and improving as he does so. It's been good to see.
Meanwhile, throughout the season will be a bit shorter than, well, the other leagues or the other Founders Leagues we had. If we just take a look at it, we will only have 3 races, 2 60-minute ones, 1 120-minute race, and basically with our best of the Founders League. Since, as said last time and also today earlier on, the Founders League will be rebranded and changed a little bit for 2025. So maybe this will be interesting to some of you too. But we will go from those touring cars that we are driving today to GT4 cars. Maybe we will see Joachim Thunder back in an Audi, maybe we'll see him in a BMW. Let's wait and see. But after that it will be a 2-hour race with the GT3 cars, and I think the 2.4-hour race that we had on this track was one of the best races we ever had. Yeah,
I'd agree with you there. Yeah, this season is a bit more kind of Founders League All-Stars, I think. You know, I think it's got a good selection of races going on. And gradually going up in power. Almost like you planned it.
Just almost. Now into the small carousel for Dominik Ladler, keeping it nice and tidy to the inside. Meanwhile, Eric Häusler is on the Döttinger Höhe. And there you can really hear the ref limiter. It's not the nicest to your ears, but well, what are you gonna do? Like,
the TCR engine sounds just like the tyres are a bit on the old. Well, from earlier on in development, I should probably say. I'm sure at some point they'll get a bit of a rework. I know a lot of our more recent cars have definitely sounded a lot fuller and have got more pleasing engine notes, shall we say.
oh, Joachim Thunder, only 2/10 slower than Eric Häusler. And if Eric Häusler hadn't improved on that final lap or on the second lap, I think Joachim Thunder might have had a shot at pole position here today. And Dominik Ladler also only within 7/10.
I think we've got a race on our hands here.
Very much so. It's very close between the three of them. I mean, 7/10 on 9-minute lap. That is... It's simply nothing, you know. It's...
No, it is nothing at all, especially with the Döttinger Höhe. You make 2/10, 7/10 back easily.
And we have 5 cars on the grid. So we see some people back that we missed in qualifying.
Yeah, Dennis Kurtzer apparently had a bit of a server disconnecting issue. So he's not on the grid right now.
And we go racing. That went a bit faster than expected. But Eric Häusler having to defend from Joachim Thunder on the inside. Oh, and there's contact. Dominik Ladler spinning. I think that was with... Was it with Holger Klar who was on the outside? It might have been. I think I saw the 6 car on the inside of Dominik Ladler right there.
Yeah, someone took a bit of an optimistic lunge into Dominik Ladler there, but he's carrying on. He's not lost too much time. I'm sure he'll be back on it soon enough.
Anyway, Joachim Thunder has inherited the lead from Eric Häusler. So maybe he was not too unhappy by starting on the, well, what is then the inside lane of turn 1. Dominik Ladler 6.7 seconds behind the leaders. So could have gone back better, but could have also gone way worse.
Yeah, for sure. He did get spun around, but he managed to recover pretty quickly.
But, I mean, now from qualifying we know how close it is in pace between the three. We know Joachim Thunder, Dominik Ladler, they are very good in the long run, both. Eric Häusler and Pascal Jordan, who's currently also sitting in 3rd, so he made up a spot. They, while being good in the long run, and especially Jordan recently having some very outstanding performances, I think it's more interesting with them. They can be super rapid, especially after the pit stop.
Yeah, the pits is going to be an interesting time, I think. Given how close the pace was between the top 3, I know Dominik Ladler's a little bit further back now after the incident at turn 1, but the pits might well be the deciding factor in this race. Joachim Thunder streaking away at the start, though, giving himself a 1.5 second gap. the Audi really excelling in the twirly, twisty sections of the circuit.
Yeah, of course, it will also be very interesting to see if the people will change tires or not. I mean, those tires should be able to last the race distance, 60 minutes. But if I remember correctly, last time around, with Adrian Lunio winning the race, we also had differences in people choosing or opting to change tires and opting not to. And in the end, it was clear how big the advantage is for the people who change tires. So, Joachim Thunder and Dominik Ladler were in the races. So, do they remember that? Do they have it in mind? What do you think?
Well, I know that in the founders' channels, Joachim Thunder has been talking a bit about pit strategy and changing tyres. I believe, unless he's trying to send everyone a bit of a cheeky dummy, he's going to be changing tyres. He doesn't think it's worth trying to stay out on a single set of tyres. The fronts in the touring cars do get pretty hot, with them being a bit understeery on exit. So I think if you want to go on a single set of tyres, it has to be a strategy you use from the beginning of the race and aim to do that and maybe take it a bit easier.
Yeah, I mean, basically drive the car on one axle only, and that is the front axle. The rears basically don't get used at all. Could drive perhaps 10 hours on one set of rear tires. Not much of an issue. But yeah, the balance of course also shifts. While you rail down the fronts like they're nothing, the rears don't get nearly as worn out over time. You will get more understeer, resulting in more heat and more degrading in the front tires. So it's kind of like a death circle in a way as soon as you pass a certain threshold, which you might pass in 30-40 minutes race time.
Yeah, but once your fronts start wearing and losing a bit of grip, you've got to push so much more weight forward to try and get the back end to rotate, which leads to hotter front tyres and more wear. And like you said, it's a bit of a vicious circle after that point.
Of course, the tires we are running at the moment are closer to what you would consider sprint tires. You know, out there are many different components of tires. For example, in the WEC, you can easily double and triple stint some of the tires since they are much harder in compound. But in a GT3 Sprint Series, for example the DTM or something, they would use completely different tires that are much grippier but also would wear out a lot more. Same goes of course for tires in the touring car scene.
Yeah, they tend not to have as much kind of variation in race length as the GT3 cars, but obviously you get touring cars in the 24-hour races, like the Nürburgring 24-hour and the VLN series. There are touring cars running in that, so they definitely do not use the same compound.
I mean, at the same time, there's WTCR, which is the closest you can get to a sprint race you will ever be.
Yeah.
They run 3 30-minute races in the current format or something, or 2.
Yeah, British touring car, I think, is 3 25-minute races as well, so they do not really care about tyre life in those situations.
Even though I mean, of course, the British Touring Car Championship has different specifications of cars. They don't use touring cars like we do, not WTCR cars, but other touring cars.
Yeah, I think the British touring car is on a slightly different spec. They don't use the kind of global TCR spec that I think you find in most places.
But I think you have to use, except for rain races of course, 3 different compounds for the 3 races, if I remember that correctly.
Oh, you're putting me on the spot there. I can't remember.
It's definitely an
You
action-packed
might.
series if you're looking for some touring car action.
Yeah, I think you might be right though. Yeah, I think there is three different compounds, and you have to use a different one in each race.
You want to hear another great transition?
Go for it.
Where you can find great touring car content in the British Touring Car Championship. You can also see it here on RENNSPORTs, since Eric Häusler has closed the gap to Joachim Thunder over the last few sectors. It's down to 8/10 as we go onto the Röttinger Höhe. Eric Häusler has a bit of a better run out of the turn. I mean, it was a pretty good showcase of the exit that matters the most, and is not quite in the best slipstream range, but he will get closer to Joachim Thunder and perhaps put on a fight for the lead in this race.
Yeah, he's closed the gap up quite a lot there. Joachim Thunder made a lot of space at the beginning of the lap, so I'll be interested to see if he pulls away again this lap. But Eric Häusler definitely clawing his way back towards Joachim Thunder's bumper towards the end of the lap there, and brought the gap down a lot.
It's also a great showcase with the two different cars being able to run basically identical. Since they are very close, of course, in concept and in general performance, since they are built with parity in mind. I mean, of course, in real life you have parity and you have BOP. I want to say BWT, but that's something entirely different. And parity is basically you have cars that are built to very identical specs. And Joachim Thunder missing turn 1, and now is to defend on the inside from Eric Häusler as a good run out of the Yokohama S. And now alongside we go into the Ford curve. Joachim Thunder on the inside is the preferred line through here, and seems like is able to keep the lead for now, but he shouldn't do that too often, because he's very vulnerable in the first sector of the Grand Prix circuit by misbraking into turn 1.
Yeah, there's a lot of places to lunge at the beginning of the Grand Prix circuit, so you definitely don't want to be fighting with someone there if you can avoid it. People tend to be a bit more cautious about making overtakes on the Nordschleife proper, for obvious reasons. It's fast and flowing. There's walls right next to you. But so yeah, a lot of people are a lot more familiar with the overtaking positions in the GP circuit, and maybe a bit more happy-go-lucky about making a lunge.
Dominic Lala about 1.2 seconds back from Pascal Jordan for P3, is closing in on the German, but still some way for him to go to close in on the leaders. They've lost some time by fighting though, so for him this might be the best case scenario.
Yeah, if these two can fight all the way up to the pit stop, then it'll allow Dominic Ladler to reel them in a lot more. Assuming he can get past Pascal Jordan, that is, of course.
Who is a very good defensive driver. So is Dominic Ladler, and Dominic Ladler is also very good on the offensive side. But so is Pascal Jordan. It's just the case of, I mean, we know that Dominic Ladler usually decides whether he wants to fight. Basically, it's in the hand of Dominic Ladler whether you will get the position or not. But with Pascal Jordan, we don't quite know yet. We haven't seen him. We have seen him quite often, which is good, but not that often that we instinctively know. But the fights we have seen from him were stellar, that's for certain. And Eric Häusler right up onto the curbing. You don't really want to hit that in real life because it's shaking your car like crazy. Especially if you're doing Twistenfahrten and you're there with your private car. Those, let's call them rumble strips, the grey ones, they can really cause a lot of damage if you're not careful.
Oh, Pascal Jordan just running wide and off the track a little bit there and letting Dominic Ladler through.
Also, the spot race struggled a lot in the GT4 race.
Pascal Jordan now seems to have quit to the pits.
Very interesting.
So I wonder if it was an intentional punning off track there.
Or maybe an issue with his hardware. Wouldn't be the first time we had that as well.
That's for sure.
Was it a brake pedal that snapped off or that disconnected? I can't quite remember. But we had the situation like that definitely at some point.
Yep. It's a part of sim racing, it happens sometimes.
I mean, there's a very popular or very famous clip featuring basically 4-time F1 world champion in a Audi GT3 race. But Eric Häusler still very much within the hunt of Joachim Thunder.
Yeah, the pace between them is fairly obviously pretty close, but the gap does kind of open up and close up a little bit as the differences in the two cars in the different sections of the track. And that means Dominic Ladler's just got to get his head down and go into qualifying mode now, really, and just try and consistently put in some quicker laps.
Or maybe he's going for strategy by saving tires a bit, or at least taking care of them.
Maybe.
Not changing tires, hoping that the leaders change tires. Wouldn't be the first time we see that either, but it will be very interesting for sure, because then he would have about a 15 to 16 second cushion, if I see that correctly.
Yeah, probably somewhere around about there. You're probably looking at about 40 to 45 seconds for a full pit stop. Whereas fuel, they can maybe do it in more kind of 15, 20 seconds, something like that, from pit entry to pit exit. So yeah, you'd probably gain about 15 seconds on the leaders if you chose to just take fuel.
But coming back to the closeness between the two cars, parity, BOP and all that stuff, we actually don't have a BOP in place for these cars at this track, since they just run this well together. With these two cars that we feature in the class, it's of course the case that they are probably more similar in terms of performance anyway, since they are both on the longer side, like the wheelbase is longer, compared to, for example, the old Hyundai i30N TCR, which was very short in its wheelbase. Both being, well, sedans, not hatchbacks. They are not too far apart, but still, I think the Audi is a bit better when it comes to the power sections, especially on the Döttinger Höhe, where it gets a bit straight, and the Hyundai N benefits a bit more from the technical side of turns. That's why I see Eric Häusler, for example, getting closer to Joachim Thunder here through this sector from Hohe 8 down to Bellof S, since the car is just a bit more planted through the faster turns where the Audi is a bit more unsettled. It's just lacking the punch that the Audi has underneath that hood.
Yeah, I think from what I remember from the first race as well, the Audi has got a little bit more tyre wear than the Hyundai. So it's very, very quick when it's on new tyres, but slowly starts to drop off a little bit more than the Hyundai as the stint goes on. The gap back to Dominic Ladler seems to be growing a little bit more now, so yeah, I wonder if he's going for the fuel-only stop strategy.
Probably the most likely. I mean, the only way you can really save the tires of these TCRs is by not braking as hard. I mean, that's not big of a problem, you can lift the coast a bit. But getting the power down, you can't just use throttle out of turns. You have to wait until the car is fully rotated before you can then slowly apply power or be even more cautious throughout the turn, since the amount of grip basically always remains the same, and the more grip you use for turning, for example, the less you can use for accelerating, and vice versa. You always have to balance it out. And if you cross the line, basically, if you get outside of there's like a circle of grip, if you can call it that, then you will start to have wheel slip. So basically you will understeer, and you will have wheel spin, basically doing a small burnout, and that really wears down your tire.
Yes. Especially with these being front wheel drive, like you're saying, about you are trying to use the same tires to turn and accelerate at the same time, and you've got the added problem that when you accelerate, it shifts weight to the back of the car, which gives the front wheels even less traction. So these front wheel drive cars are very much a balancing act when it comes to exiting the corners. You need to get as much rotation as you can early on in the corner and try and fire it out the other side as straight as you possibly can to try and get as much grip as you can out of what is already a fairly overloaded tire, shall we say.
I mean, it's a very, very good way of learning throttle control. I used to really enjoy GT style cars back then when I raced more actively. And at some point I kind of had to do touring cars since it was on the schedule in racing back then. And I couldn't quite get used to it, and it took me a lot of time and effort to really get used to it. I liked the cars themselves, I had no issues with them, but it was very hard to get used to them, and many of you who haven't tried it before maybe thinking the same. But it's not only worth it to learn this car, it will also make you much better driver for the GT3 cars, since the smoother you are with the throttle, the basically harder you can push the car overall.
Yeah, it's one of those situations where if you feel like you're going slow, you somehow end up actually going faster.
Yeah, it can be compared to that, now that you mention it like this. But with the M2 that we mentioned earlier that was announced today on the radio check, it's basically doing the opposite in a way. There you learn how to drive the car through the corner with the wheel, basically. With the TCR you learn to do it with the throttle, and both combine it basically in a GT3, since the GT3 with the aerodynamics it is rear-wheel drive, so you need the steering control of the M2, but you also need the throttle control of the TCR to not spin your rear tires and basically spin out of the exit under acceleration.
Yeah, it's a good learning combo between the TCR cars and the M2, I think, and it'll be it's maybe not the most glamorous one that people want to immediately boot into when they start the game. There's hypercars there's the GT3s, which everyone obviously loves. But if you want to learn racecraft, well, at least the driving side of the racecraft, then the TCRs, the slower cars like M2s, are a good place to start and really kind of cut your teeth and get your skills up.
It's amazing how these two still are running pretty much nose to tail, but Eric Chrysler can't get close. And it's not due to dirty air or anything, those cars don't really get affected by it. Of course, a very tiny bit. It can be a bit scary through the likes of Schwedenkreuz, where you're really at the limit of the car's grip, but other than that, you can run bumper to bumper on those cars without any issues. But still, Eric Chrysler can't really get close enough to really launch an attack on Joachim Thunder. who's just doing consistent laps, no mistakes, except for that small misbreak in turn 1. But even from that, he just recovered. It's amazing.
Yeah, he's pulled the gap out to about what it was before. I wonder if Eric Heusler's maybe doing a bit of studying his opponent and trying to figure out where he's stronger and where he isn't, without putting too much pressure on right now. They're still pulling away from Dominic Ladler, so that you don't have to worry about him getting involved immediately. So he's maybe just taking some time to study what Joachim Thunder's doing, how he's taking corners, where the Audi's stronger than the Hyundai is, and make a bit of a plan for how he's going to do this.
On the other hand, if I were in the situation of Eric Heusler or Joachim Thunder, which I'm not because I'm slower than them, but if I were in that situation, I definitely wouldn't count out Dominic Ladler from it. Of course, you're gonna have pressure tires if Ladler decides to not change tires, and you do. But, I mean, we've seen it earlier. It's hard to get past on the Nürburgring Nordschleife in itself. You have the ref limiter problem on the Döttinger Höhe, so you just can't do the slam dunk overtake by slipstreaming past, like in a GT3 or GT4 car. If you have a Dominic Ladler, let's say 10 seconds ahead of you, with 3 more laps to go. Or 4 more laps, even. I wouldn't be as laid back, let's say. Not saying these two are laid back, but I wouldn't be laid back, let's say it like that.
I agree with you there. It is a difficult track to overtake, and Dominic Ladler has shown time and time again that if he knows the track and he knows the line, which he clearly does at the Nordschleife, then he can make it very, very difficult for people to get past. Even with the grip advantage you have from new tyres, it's not going to be an easy task, but it's a problem for future then. They can't they can't decide what Dominic Ladler's going to do. They've got to let him race his own race and deal with whatever comes up, I suppose.
I mean, for Dominic Ladler, the race has started very poorly.
Yeah, he did not have a dream start by any stretch of the imagination. And if he is going for a no tyre stop, then the spin into turn 1 was not a great thing for it, because it does mess up your tyres a little bit and overheats them, which causes them to wear a bit quicker. At least until you can get the temperatures back down again.
Through the small carousel we go. But Eric Heusler has lost a bit of time through the sector from Bell of S to the small carousel. About 3/10 he lost. Now well outside any slipstream range for the TCR cars. Meanwhile, question in chat from our beloved Danny Schroeder. Maybe we see him tomorrow, since he only said he's not available on Friday, so maybe it's tomorrow. But yeah, the problem is we are basically running a bit at capacity with the 2 streams we already have a week. So unfortunately we can't quite fit that in on a Wednesday. In the end, we are just 2 dudes sitting in front of the PC and talking about cars for 2 hours straight. Oh, and Joachim Thunder goes wide. And blocks out Eric Heusler before they go into the pits. So I kind of salvaged it, but we're into... Oh, and they hit going into the pits.
Yeah, somebody misjudged the pit lane there.
I've probably never seen that. And I hope that both were at pit speed limit when going into the pits. But
Yeah,
here comes Dominik Ladler. Oh, and Eric Häusler doesn't go for tires.
no, Eric Häusler in and out, quick splash and dash. Joachim Thunder is definitely changing tyres, and Dominik Ladler is not changing tyres either.
There's no very interesting prospect, because that will put Joachim Thunder on the back foot to Eric Häusler by approximately 25 to 30 seconds. And he has Dominik Ladler in front of him.
Coming out the pits now. Hopefully he won't get a drive-through for when he got punted in the rear.
I mean, if he did, it would have been a pro gamer move by Eric Häusler. One that wouldn't have gone unpunished for certain. But I always wondered what you have to do for this.
He's not got anything, so I think he's got away with that fine. Just a little bump.
So let's see, 26 seconds back to Eric Häusler. We'll keep an eye on that gap. Oh, and drifting through forward curve. So his current car settings probably not really working with the new sets of tires.
Yeah, the new tyres are going to be cold compared to what he's just been racing on, so it takes a little bit to adjust. Whereas Häusler and Ladler have obviously got the same tyres they had on. They're just a little bit colder because they've been sat in the pits for a few seconds.
Yeah, and you will usually, I think Joachim Thunder might do the same as most of us would do. In a TCR, you change the balance of the car, the brake bias, perhaps also some ABS settings, but usually the brake bias, the longer the stint goes, since in those cars you rear the fronts more. At some point you want to shift the brake balance more rearwards, and if you forget to basically put them more forwards again after the pit stop, you will have a very rear heavy car going into a turn. But right up to the barrier, Eric Häusler through forgot the name. Hudson. As long as you're not in the wall, it's all fine. But Joachim Thunder already down to 23 seconds, even with the mistakes. So Joachim Thunder having mighty pace. Of course, the pace is gonna dry out a tiny bit later in the stint. Of course, so does Häuslers and Ladlers, so they won't get any better still. But the advantage Thunder is the biggest right now. But can already see how big the effect is on that Audi. I suspect we will see the biggest... Oh, and Eric Häusler in the wall. And big time in the wall. Good thing for him, damage isn't turned on, but that will lose him lots and lots and lots of time. And here comes Dominik Ladler.
Just joining the track in front of Dominik Ladler there. He's not really up to race speed just yet. And that's going to play into Joachim Thunder's hands if these two can start battling.
I wonder if Häusler kind of lost his rhythm with Joachim Thunder not in front of him, because if you have a car in front of you, some don't like it, some like it. Talked about it in other podcasts for quite a long time, but you kind of adapt to the car in front as well a lot, and now that you're on clean air, you might over and underestimate the car in certain areas. Dominik Ladler was really right through the triple right. I think usually it's miss, hit, miss in terms of the apexes. In this case, it was unfortunately miss, miss, miss. Which is still better than what I do, because I usually do hit, 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 which is awful to do.
I can never remember the combination. Every time I come to that corner, I'm always thinking, I know it's one, and it's either miss, hit, miss, or hit, miss, hit. And I can never remember which one it is.
I just watch my entry for the turn and then decide what to go for, basically. But for me personally, probably the trickiest spot on the Nordschleife.
Yeah, if you do get it wrong and you end up drifting a little bit onto the grass on the outside at the end, it's a painful wall ride.
Another spot I struggle a lot with, of course, I mean, mood core, where everybody struggles with that, which we're just approaching now at rapid speeds. But I got used to that quite quickly because it's, in essence, fairly simple. You just pick a brake marker on the right-hand side, brake for it, and then turn in. But for the other turn that I struggled with, Schwalbenschwanz, you just didn't have any braking markers to go by. At least I could never find one that worked for me.
Yeah, finding brake markers at Nordschleife can be difficult just because it's so long. Normally in a track, if there's a couple of corners without decent brake markers, you can kind of figure something out, because there's only 10, 15 corners in a track, so it's not too much of a big deal. Whereas here, it's so long. Like, being able, picking something a bit trickier to find, a bit less obvious, it's just difficult to get it to stick in your memory. Or at least, maybe that's just me.
I mean, you're totally on with it, actually, because during the COVID years, especially the first one, we had the 24 hours, and of course we had no fans at the track, unfortunately, which was very different to what you usually see. I mean, you usually see the barrels with fire inside and all the party tents and stuff. And drivers actually explained a lot that it's hard to find braking markers in the night, since the years prior they usually use some stuff the fans built or the fans lit up. Of course, not the best thing if then some of the lights go missing at night, but apart from that, they were actually used as braking marks. And if you're suddenly on a pitch black Nordschleife, that is very different.
Yeah, for sure. It must have been very strange for the drivers going into a completely dark Nordschleife when they're used to such a kind of the festival atmosphere that it normally has around there, and the lights and all the fans. To having to maintain your concentration throughout the entire nighttime section of the 24 hours, and not having that kind of thing as reference.
Even though this place is very different to other tracks in that regard, I think, and I believe, or I heard from a lot of people that they feel the same way as I do about this track. You don't really drive the same way that you do on other tracks, because the Nordschleife is just so much going by feel instead of just going by, okay, I will brake at 150 meters, or I will use this brake marker.
Some of the shots of dotting in there, you can just see Joachim Thunder in the distance.
Oh yeah, you can actually. But you can also see that Dominik Lala is 1/10 behind Eric Häusler still, so... But yeah, coming back to the topic, it's very different in the way you approach the track. On Spa, you will go like, okay, for Puhon I will brake on the 100 meter marker, I think it is, or the curb on the right hand side. On the Nordschleife, you don't do that. You just know, okay, this is the turn, and I will brake right about here, and it will work. Because you've done either so many laps at this track that you know it by heart, or just because it feels right, you know?
Yeah, you've got to kind of... You can't take it to kind of like the nth degree of precision you can on a traditional track, because your brain just can't handle that much data every lap. There's only so much our little brains can do. And memorizing every little braking zone over 100 corners, it's a lot to process when you try to drive a car at the same time.
So you just opt to not do that at all, just drive.
Yeah, just drive it.
It is a very nice feeling though on the Nordschleife.
And I think that's partly what gives it the feeling of flow it has, because you're just driving by feel rather than trying to memorize points all the time. And I think it kind of puts you more in touch with the track and lets you just drive rather than concentrate too much on everything else.
Dominik Ladler now right on the tailgate of Eric Häusler. And this time it will be Joachim Thunder who will be happy to see that one.
Yeah, for sure. He's going to be looking at his Delta right now and hoping they can hold each other up a little bit. Let him catch up a little bit more. He's got the rubber advantage. So if he can close up, he can maybe make something of it without having a bit more grip.
Do you think Dominik Ladler will have a positive tire delta to Eric Häusler, since Eric Häusler was pretty much strapped behind Joachim Thunder for the first stint?
I think so, yeah. I think he was looking after his tyres a little bit more at the beginning. Eric Häusler was obviously battling with Thunder and trying to keep up with him, which it's very difficult not to do. Even though he was maybe planning from the beginning to not go for tyres. When there's another car that close in front of you, it must be tempting to just push a little bit more and try and keep up with them. So I think Dominik Ladler's tyres are going to be just a fraction better than Häusler's tyres right now.
Can he make a use of it though? That will be the interesting question.
If he is, he's going to have to do something fast, I think, because Thunder is closing up like a freight train right now.
Also, of course, Eric Häusler shouldn't do the same mistakes once more. But he puts it right to the edge again, going into the unknown forced.
That's commitment.
Certain Enrico Bräuniger asking for another photo finish today. We will see, but I mean, at this rate, would I be surprised? No, not really.
I'm guessing that the Thunder is probably hoping for something a bit less dramatic for his own heart. But as us watching all three cars coming together with one corner to go would be pretty good.
And that's, ladies and gentlemen, how Cars 1 began. Actually, just last weekend I watched the movie with a friend again.
Yeah?
Yeah. Great childhood memories every time. You know when you watch the old Fast and Furious movies, which are also great, but like you go like, this makes no sense, this makes no sense. But in Cars you go like, this makes no sense from an automotive perspective, but I still love it and I still want to have it in the movie.
I've got to admit, I drifted off from the Fast and the Furious movies after probably the third one. I think I've watched some of the other ones, but I immediately forgot them.
Yeah, for me it was after the 7th one. But what Eric Häusler probably wants to get rid of at the moment is Dominik Ladler, who's only 3/10 behind the German, looking good to launch an overtake later this lap perhaps. if he can keep it that close.
Yeah, I think he got a good run up the hill there because he really closed up some distance. Joachim Thunder's relentless assault has slowed down a little bit here. So yeah, if Dominic Ladler can stay somewhere around this gap, again, it has been kind of like shrinking and growing a little bit as the laps go. But if he can stay within the kind of half-second area, then he's looking good for making an overtaking move.
And Eric Häusler's starting to make small mistakes here and there. Went a bit too right through Krystall, now drifted right in the carousel. And as soon as the window opens for Dominic Ladler to slip through, I think he's gonna take it.
Yeah, he's a very careful driver and he's very safe and clean with his overtakes, but he's not gonna have to be asked twice to make an overtaking move, I don't think.
Dominic Ladler is the type of guy who will gladly accept an invitation.
Gap just opening up by a tenth there, but he's quickly closed it back down into the next braking zone.
You can also see the different approaches to each turn from both drivers. Dominic Ladler again, after Flansgarten here, keeping it much closer to the inside line compared to Eric Häusler. Eric Häusler gains into the turn, but Dominic Ladler pretty much gains all of it back, exiting the turn once more. So even with the same car, you see very different styles in driving and making your lap time. And there's no faster way of doing it, basically.
No. And Joachim Thunder really closing up in the uphill section of the track there, gaining 2 seconds on the two Hyundais of Red.
Oh, Dominic Ladler with a beautiful one through a small carousel, but Eric Häusler also with a decent one.
You'd see there the different lines as well. Ladler keeping it much tighter after the small carousel.
Now onto the Döttinger. 5/10 separating the two cars, and there's Joachim Thunder in the background with his R3 going below the Audi Sport Bridge. And we will have 2 more laps after this one.
Ladler closing up, but I don't think he's going to get close enough to make a move here.
Not here, but maybe into turn 1.
Yeah, if you can get a good exit onto the start-finish straight, then turn 1 is a possibility.
Keeping it closer to the wall. Straightening up the exit. Eric Häusler right up to the wall. Will Dominic Ladler launch it on the inside into turn 1? He's definitely looking for it. He's looking for it. Dominic Ladler down the inside, having to leave space now through the left-hander of Yokohama.
I think he's just managed to squeeze past there.
Dominic Ladler into the lead of the race. 3rd race leader.
Of course, the important thing for him now is can he make any kind of gap out of it? There's not much point in getting past if then you're battling for the next few corners, because that'll really let Joachim Thunder close up.
Yeah, and Joachim Thunder 5 seconds between the pair. So if Dominic Ladler can break away from Eric Häusler ever so slightly, can Eric Häusler hold up Joachim Thunder for long enough so that Dominic Ladler can maybe take the victory?
So we think there's 2 more laps left of the race to go. Last lap, Joachim Thunder was 4 seconds faster than the pair ahead of him.
And the two have been fighting quite a lot over the lap though, so it will be quite interesting. I think he will be within about 2 seconds then, coming into the final lap, if nothing out of the ordinary happens. If Häusler keeps up with Dominik Lada, we will have a 3-car dogfight on the last lap. But it seems like Dominik Lada is just a tiny bit faster than Häusler, getting more potential out of his Elantra.
Yeah, he's getting a little bit away from Eric Häusler here, which I'm sure is good for him, because if Häusler can hold up Joachim Thunder for a little bit, then that obviously increases his chances of taking the top step of the podium here. Joachim Thunder will probably be pretty much on Häusler by the end of the lap. So any gap that Ladler can make on top of that is a big bonus for him.
0.1 seconds now, the gap.
Gap back to Joachim Thunder, currently 3.9, so that's within kind of a lap for Thunder with their current time difference from the last laps.
How much power does Joachim Thunder still have in those tires? That is the big question here.
Yeah, how hard is he pushing them? How hot are they right now? The heat, I think, will be the big deciding factor there. If these two have been taking it easier, which they have been doing, like I said, 4 seconds a lap slower, are their tyres cooked, or have they been taking it easy and keeping the temperatures down a little bit?
I think Dominik Lala was still very cautious with it in a way, or very caretaking of it, but Eric Häusler seems sometimes to have pushed a lot, and Joachim Thunder going right now through Metzgersfeld. He clipped the grass, I think, on the entry to the second left-hander. Fortunately for him, only lost him about 1.5 tenths, but it can nag on your confidence at times. Oh, and again,
Yeah.
Big hit with the curb.
Pushing the car is definitely a confidence game, isn't it?
A very big one at that. But Joachim Thunder is sure having a lot of confidence the way he's throwing the car into the turns.
Gap between the three cars pretty much equal now. Dominik Ladler getting a couple of seconds on Häusler and Thunder closing up a little bit.
The biggest time gain for Joachim Thunder is still to come, because that will be the run downhill from Hohe Acht up until Döttinger Höhe. That is where the fresh tires will have the most effect over a longer amount of time, or a longer period of time. If he gets past Eric Häusler by that point, don't see many issues. If he doesn't, that might cost him the race victory.
Yeah, if he's still behind Häusler at that point, then it's going to slow his pace down quite a lot. So he did make a lot of time up in those kind of sectors last lap, so he'll want to be past there to try and carry on gaining time on Dominik Ladler.
Eric Häusler went wide through Mutkurve into the grass with 2 wheels, and again now through Klostertal, just a bit wide, running up the high side.
Okay, just making a few little unforced errors there.
But now this is important for Joachim Thunder. Can he find a way past Eric Häusler? That's very hard to do in this segment of the track. that's about to come, but it is doable.
Yeah, it's a very flowing, even for the Nordschleife, it's a very flowing section of the track, but it does kind of only really have one racing line.
Can already see it's costing Joachim Thunder a lot of time. Gap is back up to 5.6 seconds.
Just showing himself in Häusler's mirrors there, trying to see if he can put him off a little bit. But Häusler keeping his nerve and staying on the line.
Thunder already starting to understeer though as well. And now knows to take through the Sprunghügel. Second of the bigger jumps. Even through Belov as showing himself in the mirror.
Trying everything he can to try and put Häusler off a little bit here. But Häusler playing it cool.
I mean, next up is the Dörtinger Höhe, so it'll be interesting to see what they will opt to do. Will they maybe bump draft their way along the Dörtinger Höhe?
It would
Oh,
maybe
and
be a
Häusler,
sensible option.
Häusler in the wall. I mean, it's definitely the worst timing for him Thunder since he lost easy 1.622 seconds to Dominik Ladler while being stuck behind Eric Häusler, and now he won't have Slipstream or a bump draft partner.
Yeah, it's the lacking the slipstream down the Dörtinger Höhe is going to be a bit of a pain for him, but I'm sure he's pleased to be ahead instead of behind. Eric Häusler just pushing to try and get the best run he could onto the Dörtinger there, and unfortunately going a little bit too far.
But
Joachim Thunder now with one lap to make up 6.6 seconds.
It's a hard thing to ask for, but it's not impossible either as we go into the final lap of this race.
Dominik Ladler's last lap 2 seconds slower than his previous lap. So obviously the tyres are having a bit of an effect on him. He did overtake last lap, but he did it pretty early on, so he was running with clean road most of it. Joachim Thunder's obviously a little bit slower, with him being behind Eric Häusler for so long.
But Joachim Thunder is still losing time to Dominik Ladler. Has he overcooked the tires? Does he... It seems like the car's understeering more. Where we will really see the difference is when we go through Hatzenbach. That will be where it will really show the quality of the tires, basically. Joachim Thunder just pulled out 6/10 to Dominik Ladler through Bilstein. Just looks like it.
Yeah, he lost a little bit in the kind of arena section, but he seems to have really pulled some time back on the rest of the GP loop there. But the Delta is jumping around fairly erratically at the minute. It's they're definitely finding time at different points of the circuit. But Dominik Ladler must be feeling pretty good right now. We've sung his praises about being a defensive driver more than once, and he's got 6 seconds on Joachim Thunder. on top of that. I'm sure he'll be soaking up the pressure like a sponge right now, and he won't be too fussed. We'll just be playing it by each corner as it comes.
And again, 410th going through Hudson. And just by looking at the way he drives through the turns, it just doesn't look as aggressive anymore. So I wonder if he maybe has kinda worn out the tires to the point where the difference in pace to Dominik Ladler's and Eric Häusler's tires isn't as big anymore.
Maybe, yeah. I think in the Discord chat, I think Thunder was saying after about 3 laps, the tires start to feel a bit loose on the Audi. So he obviously had his 3 laps since the pit stop.
He's still getting a lot on those higher low turns like Flugplatz and now Armenberg. That's where he's really giving Dominik Ladler some serious time. But in the mid to low speed sections, you just can't really get the usage out of the new tires, or the newer tires. Dominik Ladler on 3-lap older tires.
It's definitely been a battle of the strategies race.
I mean,
it's good to see that different strategies are viable and both bring people pretty close to winning, so that's good.
I mean, we had 3 competitive cars in 2 very different situations, 2 being in a close fight and 1 being all alone, with all 3 cars opting for different strategies, basically completely switching around the way the timetable looked. I mean, Dominik Ladler was, before the pit stop, 17 seconds behind the pair of Thunder and Häusler.
Yeah, it was 17 seconds, yeah.
It's literally insane to think about.
Yeah, normally when you see such different strategies in play, you can also put it down to the pace of the individual drivers, maybe making a lot of a difference. But these guys were really close together in qualifying. They've obviously, as far as driving ability is concerned, they're close together. You can pretty much draw this as a direct comparison of the 3 strategies being used.
Meanwhile, I think Eric Häusler has no more performance left in the front tires. He's also braking very early for the turns.
He seems to have dropped way back. But yeah, I think his tires are done.
I wonder what happened if he would have changed tires. He would probably still be behind Joachim Thunder after the pit stop. But did he maybe have a longer fighting chance, since if what Joachim Thunder said is true, that the launch was easier on the tires than the Audi, which I do think as well from my experience, then he could have had a shot in the final lap, but they both would have had to catch up to Dominik Ladler and Joachim Thunder in the grass now as well. Not losing too much time, unfortunately, but not making his job any easier.
No, I think losing any time at this point is too much time, isn't it? The pressure's going to be on for him to do perfect corners every corner to try and close this gap up to look Dominik Ladler. But yeah, going back to if Häusler had changed tyres, if playing a game of hypotheticals, I think if he'd have changed tyres and if he hadn't been aggressive with Joachim Thunder, then the 2 of them together could have maybe closed this gap up even more. Could have had a bit of bump drafting down Dottingerhohe. But hindsight is always 20/20, as they say.
I've never heard that actually, but it makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
I mean, of course, it's probably used more in the English language than in the German.
Yeah. Gap now just under 4 seconds.
He's made a pretty big leap, Joachim Thunder, but 3.5 seconds is still so much time. Now again, a corner that should really suit him compared to Dominic Ladler. And again, a few tenths made up.
Dominic Ladler's kind of getting all kinds of bouncy over the jumps there.
Below 3 now. Schwalbenschwanz, another turn. The Audi with the fresh tires likes more than the Elantra on the old ones.
Dominic Ladler through the mini carousel, still the just over 2 seconds to the good down the track.
Right up to the right line for Joachim Thunder. Getting as much exit speed as possible. Can see how much steering lock he's using. Understeering through the full turn, but 2.4 seconds.
You wouldn't expect the gap to change much down Dottinger Ho, would you?
Exactly. Of course, a tiny bit, since the Audi is a bit stronger in terms of top speed, but nowhere near close enough to make up 2.4 seconds. So it's all about Dominic Ladler making the final braking zone, making it through Hohenrhein. Again, aggressive entry as we are used to him. And out of the final turn, it will be Dominic Ladler, the winner of the first race in Season 3. And I think it's his first race win in the Founders League as well. Joachim Thunder, what an effort. Down to 2.066 seconds, the gap in the end. And Eric Häusler, he can still be proud of what he has achieved in this race with the opening half.
Yeah, those tires were pretty wrecked, I think.
Yeah, just getting some experience from it. But Dominic Ladler, what a performance. What a way to win this race as well. I mean, coming from 17 seconds back, or let's just say 7 seconds, because the rest might have been down to strategy in the end by saving tires in the first stint. And then and he had to fight his way into the lead, since Häusler also stayed out.
Yeah.
So
yeah, he didn't have it all his own way, did he?
Yeah, definitely wasn't gifted to him at all. Gave him 174 points in the standings, 139 for Joachim Thunder, 104 for Eric Häusler. Pascal Jordan and Heinz Klaas still getting a few points to their names each. But what a performance this was by all three. I mean, for not having too many cars once more on the track, we didn't really have much time to get away from the racing, did we?
No, it was another good showing of it. You don't need a lot of cars to have a really good race. There was some quality racing by people who knew each other, treated each other with respect, and just the different strategies in play as well. I think it was an impressive race.
Yeah, and I think tomorrow will be also very exciting, because we will have a new track in the RENNSPORT community event with a proven car, the Praga R1, and 2 sprint races. So, I mean, 2 starts, 2 times the excitement. I'm very curious to how this will pan out, to be honest. I don't really know what to expect from Crest and Praga in that form with the drivers we have.
So, no, I'm not sure either, to be honest. It's going to be a new one for everybody. It's always interesting when you see like a new fantasy track being used, because we have absolutely zero expectations of what's going to happen.
Yeah, but I'd say this wraps up tonight's race very beautifully. It was a pleasure to commentate on this race once more with you. And
you.
And I'd say we see each other tomorrow again at 8 p.m. CET on this Twitch channel. And until then, have a great time and goodbye.
Goodbye.